the Banshee's song. Amidst the tempestuous storm, a young woman found herself alone in the refuge of her cabin. Suddenly, an ethereal melody, hauntingly beautiful and evocative, permeated the air, beckoning her out into the night. She recognized the Banshee's song, and despite her better judgment, she was powerless to resist its allure. As she stumbled through the shadowy woods, the Banshee's melody guided her every step. The music reverberated through her very being, imbuing her with an eerie sense of tranquility. Though she knew she should feel terror, the Syrian's song was too exquisite to ignore, and it drew her towards its source. As she ventured deeper into the forest, the woman noticed peculiar movements in the trees surrounding her. Uncanny silhouettes of people twisted into grotesque expressions of pain and agony. Her body rebelled against her attempts to flee, and she was caught in the Banshee's thrall. Finally, the woman reached a clearing, where the Banshee awaited her. The creature was breathtaking, with luscious tresses cascading down her back, and eyes that glistened like celestial orbs. But there was something amiss, something dark and ominous lurking beneath her outward beauty. The Banshee began to sing, and the woman felt herself drifting away, losing her grip on reality. She was no longer afraid, but she realized that she was being drawn towards a fate far worse than death. In a sudden moment of clarity, she recognized the truth. The Banshee was not there to slay her. The Banshee intended to replace her. Petrified, the woman shrieked as the Banshee's song escalated in intensity, obliterating everything else in her mind. She felt her physical form contorting, warping into a new shape. Abruptly, the Banshee's melody ceased. The woman surveyed her altered body, and to her horror, she realized that she had been transmuted into a Banshee. The curse of the Banshee coursed through her veins, fueling her unquenchable thirst for revenge and bloodshed. Embracing her new identity, the Banshee wandered the forest, searching for new prey to ensnare in her cursed existence. With every haunting melody she sang, she knew that others would be captivated, just as she had been. Years passed, and the Banshee became a legend, a fabled creature whispered about in hushed tones by those who dared to traverse the forest at night. Despite the tales, few had ever laid eyes on the Banshee and lived to recount their tale. One day, a group of researchers stumbled upon the Banshee's lair, determined to study the legends and myths of the world. They ventured deep into the woods, where they heard the Banshee's enchanting song, growing louder with each step. Reaching the Banshee's clearing, they finally encountered her. Awestruck and apprehensive, they braved the danger, compelled by their unrelenting curiosity, and began to inquire about her curse and the dark forces that spawned it. To their astonishment, the Banshee responded, speaking of the ancient powers that had granted her the immortality and the curse that forced her to roam the forest for centuries. Her words revealed the full extent of her strength and the depths of her malice. Abruptly, the Banshee's melody erupted once more, ensnaring the researchers in its clutches. They were powerless to resist her call, unable to move or think. Yet, one of the researchers remembered a story about the Banshee, and he sang a counter melody, a song designed to break the Banshee's curse. The Banshee's song faded away, and the researchers found themselves free from her grasp. They stumbled through the forest, still shaken by their encounter with the Banshee. As they emerged from the trees, they saw that the sun was beginning to rise. The night had been long, and they were exhausted from their ordeal, but they knew that they had uncovered something incredible, something that could change the course of history. Over the next few months, the researchers studied the Banshee's song, trying to understand its power and the dark forces that had given rise to it. They conducted experiments, analyzed data, and consulted with experts from around the world. And slowly, they began to piece together the secrets of the Banshee's curse. They learned that the Banshee was not just a creature of myth and legend, but a real entity with extraordinary abilities. They discovered that her song was not just a beautiful melody, but a potent force that could alter the minds of those who heard it. And they uncovered the ancient powers that had granted her immortality and cursed her to wander the forest for all eternity. As their research progressed, the researchers began to understand the true danger of the Banshee's curse. They realized that her song could be used as a weapon, a tool of manipulation and mind control that could be used to sway entire populations, and they knew that they had to find a way to stop her. But the Banshee was a formidable foe, and they knew that they could not defeat her alone. And so, they reached out to others, seeking allies in their fight against the dark forces that threatened to engulf them. They gathered a team of experts from around the world, each with their own unique skills and abilities. There were scientists, musicians, linguists, and historians, all working together to unravel the secrets of the Banshee's curse. For months, they toured in secrecy, conducting experiments and analyzing data. And finally, they came up with a plan. They would use the power of music to fight back against the Banshee's song, creating a counter-melody that would break her curse and free her victims from her grasp. It was a risky plan, but they had no other choice. And so, they gathered their instruments and set out into the forest, determined to face the Banshee and break her curse once and for all. As they walked, they could feel the power of the Banshee's song growing stronger with each step. But they pressed on, playing their instruments and singing their counter-melody with all their might. At first, it seemed like their efforts were in vain. The Banshee's song continued to grow louder and more powerful, drowning out their music and filling them with an overwhelming sense of dread. But then something miraculous happened. The researchers' music began to intertwine with the Banshee's song, creating a beautiful and haunting harmony that echoed through the forest. Slowly but surely, the Banshee's song began to fade, replaced by the researchers' counter-melody, and as it did, the Banshee herself appeared before them. Her eyes filled with wonder and amazement. She listened to their music, transfixed by its power and beauty, and as the final notes faded away, she felt her curse lifting, her body transforming back into its human form. The Banshee was no more, replaced by a young woman with a beautiful voice and a newfound sense of freedom. And as she looked out at the world around her, she knew that she had been given a second chance, a chance to live a life free from the curse that haunted her for so long. And so, she set out into the world, her voice ringing out like a beacon of hope and freedom. And though the researchers had never met her before, they knew that they had played a part in setting her free. The Banshee's Revenge. The tranquil and quaint town of Castle Rock had always been a bastion of serenity, until the day the Banshee made her appearance. It was whispered that she had been wronged by the townspeople, and now she was out for vengeance. The cacophonous shriek of her cries could be heard each night, resonating through the streets, instilling fright into the hearts of all who listened, but, alas, nobody could escape her wrath. One by one, the citizens of the town began to fall prey to the Banshee's curse. Their homes were decimated, their loved ones taken away, and their lives left in ruins. Nobody knew how to halt the Banshee or what crime they had committed to provoke her fury. However, a savior emerged from the shadows. His name was Jack, and he had spent years studying the ancient myths and folklore of the Banshee. He believed that he had discovered a way to shatter the curse and put an end to the Banshee's reign of terror. He convinced the townspeople to congregate at the town square at midnight, where he would execute a ritual to banish the Banshee once and for all. The townsfolk were doubtful but desperate for a resolution to their quandary. As midnight approached, Jack began his ritual. He chanted the archaic incantations and drew esoteric symbols in the air, praying that they would suffice to break the Banshee's curse. The townspeople watched in astonishment and trepidation, unsure of what would ensue. And then, just as Jack was completing the ritual, the Banshee materialized. She was more exquisite and more frightful than anyone had ever imagined, and she was determined to accomplish her goal. But Jack refused to retreat. He stood his ground and confronted the Banshee face to face, equipped only with his wisdom and bravery, and to everyone's amazement, it worked. The Banshee's curse was lifted, and the townspeople were emancipated from her grip. But Jack knew that the Banshee would not concede so easily. She was still out there, waiting for an opportunity to strike back. And so, he pledged to never let his guard down. He persisted in studying the legends of the Banshee, striving to find a way to safeguard his town and his loved ones from her retribution, for he knew that one day she would reappear more dominant and more lethal than ever before. And when she did, he would be prepared. Years elapsed, and the citizens of Castle Rock began to forget about the Banshee. They lived their lives as usual, oblivious that danger still loomed in the darkness. But Jack never forgot. He knew that the Banshee's revenge was still feasible, and he spent every waking moment getting ready for the worst. Then, one night, it happened. The Banshee returned, more dominant and more vengeful than ever before. She swept through the town like a tempest, annihilating everything in her path. But this time, Jack was prepared. He had scrutinized every aspect of the Banshee's curse, and he had formulated a plan to stop her once and for all. As the Banshee approached his abode, he stood his ground. He lifted his hands and chanted the ancient words that he had learned so long ago, and a shield of light materialized around him. The Banshee screeched and howled, but the shield held strong. Jack knew that he couldn't hold out indefinitely, but he refused to relinquish. He continued to chant, his voice amplifying with each passing moment. And then, just as the Banshee was on the verge of breaking through the shield, something miraculous occurred. A group of townspeople materialize, armed with weapons and fierce determination to save their town from the Banshee's wrath. They charge forward, striking blow after blow, determined to defeat the Banshee once and for all. As the battle raged on, the Banshee's power began to wane. Her once formidable strength was fading, and with each passing moment she grew weaker and weaker, but still, she refused to give up. She continued to fight with all her might, determined to take revenge on the people of Castle Rock. But finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the Banshee fell to the ground, defeated. The townspeople cheered in triumph as the curse was finally lifted from their once peaceful town. And yet, even in their moment of victory, Jack and the others knew that the Banshee's threat was not over, for though she may have been defeated, her legacy remained, a haunting reminder of the dangers that lurked in the shadows. And so they vowed to always be prepared, to never let their guard down, and to remain vigilant against the Banshee's return. For they knew that she was a powerful and dangerous foe, one that they could never truly defeat, but only hope to contain. And as they looked out at the peaceful town of Castle Rock, they knew that their vigilance had paid off, for though the Banshee's curse may always be a threat, they were ready to face it, no matter what horrors it might bring. The Banshee's curse. Deep in the verdant hills of Ireland lay the O'Malley family's sprawling estate, a place of wealth and privilege. But despite their grandeur, they could not escape the dark curse that had plagued their lineage for centuries. Legend whispered of a time long ago when their ancestor, Rim O'Malley, had slighted the Banshee. The ghastly wail of the spirit had echoed through time, cursing his bloodline. The curse was a malignant force that struck with merciless vengeance, taking hold and dooming every generation to meet a mysterious and terrifying fate. The family had turned to all manner of remedies, from seeking counsel from priests and witches to making offerings to the Banshee, but all was for naught. Their days were cloaked in perpetual dread as they anxiously watched and waited for the curse to strike once again. Their fears were realized when Mav, their youngest daughter, heard the Banshee's mournful cry in the dead of night. Mav had always been sensitive to the supernatural and knew that the Banshee's lament was a forewarning of their imminent doom. The family huddled together, their faces ashen with dread. They were powerless to avert the curse and knew that one by one they would fall to the Banshee's wrath. The days turned into weeks, and the O'Malley clan began to die off. Racked with agony and consumed by terror, Mav watched in horror as her loved ones perished one by one. She knew that she was next. Refusing to give in, Mav began to research the curse. She delved into old texts and records, scouring for any clues that could break the curse. And then a glimmer of hope emerged as a loophole in the curse. The curse would only take hold if an O'Malley had insulted the Banshee. Mav set out to make amends, journeying deep into the forest where the Banshee was said to dwell. In the shadowy darkness, she humbly apologized for the sins of her ancestors, begged for forgiveness, and promised to make things right. In that moment, the Banshee's curse was lifted. The stricken family members began to recover, and the Banshee's cry faded away into the night. Mav had broken the curse and saved her family from a fate worse than death. But Mav couldn't shake off the feeling of impending doom. She knew that the darkness still lurked, waiting to pounce when they least expected it. Her curiosity about the supernatural only intensified, and she dug deeper into the family's history, uncovering more legends and curses that threatened their very existence. As Mav explored further, she realized that her family's curse was just a fraction of the horrors that lurked in the shadows. Her research led her to unearth unspeakable terrors, legends of creatures that were even more terrifying than the Banshee, and curses that were more fatal than anything she could imagine. As her dread grew, but she couldn't turn away. She had to face the horrors head-on to protect her family and the world from their wrath. And so, she set off on a journey, traveling the globe to acquire ancient knowledge and forbidden secrets. Mav learned from shamans and sorcerers, and unlocked the potent powers of the earth and the forces of darkness. As she ventured deeper into the realm of the supernatural, she confronted new dangers and terrors at every turn. But she remained steadfast and undaunted, driven by her determination to defeat whatever horrors lay ahead. Years passed, and Mav emerged as a formidable force in the world of the supernatural. She battled ancient demons and vanquished curses that threatened entire villages, and throughout it all, she never forgot her roots or the family that had suffered so much under the Banshee's curse. Mav became renowned for her knowledge and expertise in the supernatural world. She traveled to far-flung places, seeking out ancient texts and learning from the most powerful sorcerers and shamans in the world. She gained a deep understanding of the dark forces that lurked in the shadows and learned how to harness their power for good. As she grew older, Mav began to think about her legacy. She knew that her family's curse had been broken, but she also knew that there were many other families out there who were suffering under the weight of ancient curses and legends. Mav made it her mission to help those families, to use her powers and knowledge to break the curses that had plagued them for generations. She traveled the world, seeking out those who needed her help, and as she helped more and more families, Mav began to realize that she was not alone in her fight against the darkness. There were other supernatural beings out there who shared her goals and her sense of purpose. She formed alliances with them, working together to defeat ancient evils and protect the innocent. As the years passed, Mav became something of a legend in the supernatural world. Her name was whispered in hushed tones, and stories were told of her bravery and her power. She had become a force of nature, a guardian against the darkness. And yet, for all her power and knowledge, Mav never forgot where she came from. She remained deeply connected to her family and her heritage, always remembering the suffering that they had endured under the Banshee's curse. As she grew older, Mav began to think about passing on her knowledge and powers to the next generation. She knew that she could not live forever, but she also knew that the fight against the darkness would never end. And so, she sought out young men and women who shared her sense of purpose, who were willing to fight against the darkness and protect the innocent. She trained them in the ways of the supernatural, passing on her knowledge and her power. In the end, Mav knew that she had done all that she could to protect her family and the world around them. She had broken the Banshee's curse, and she had fought against the darkness with all her might. And though she knew that the fight would continue long after she was gone, she was content in the knowledge she had done her part to keep the world safe from the terrors of the night. The Banshee's Cry in the night. The bucolic village of Balfordin had long been a haven of tranquility, nestled deep within the rolling hills of the Irish countryside. But on this particular night, an ominous sense of foreboding hung heavily in the air, thick with an inexplicable sense of unease that permeated the villagers' souls. As the sun slowly descended beneath the horizon, casting long shadows across the landscape, a mournful, spine-chilling cry pierced the deafening silence, echoing ominously throughout the village. The villagers knew it was the Banshee's Cry, a sound that would chill even the most stout-hearted of souls to their very core. With trepidation mounting by the second, the villagers scurried to their homes, feverishly bolting their doors and windows and fervently praying for salvation. As the night drew on, the Banshee's Cry grew increasingly more deafening, each spine-tingling wail resonating with a palpable force that sent shock waves rippling through the air. As the villagers cowered in fear, writhing in agony and despair, their minds consumed by a terror that defied all reason. Only a lone survivor remained. Sean, a brave and stalwart young man, refused to surrender without a fight. With trembling fingers, Sean reached for his father's old shotgun, determined to face the Banshee head-on. He tiptoed through the deserted streets, his heart pounding so loudly in his chest he feared the Banshee might hear it. At last, he found himself standing face to face with the source of the Banshee's mournful cry. The Banshee, a ghostly apparition with jet-black hair and eyes that shone with an otherworldly light, let out a soul-rending, keening wail. Sean felt a wave of terror wash over him, but he refused to falter. He steadied his aim, raised his shotgun, and prepared to unleash a hail of fire. For a moment, the night fell silent. Then, with one final, mournful wail, the Banshee vanished into the night, leaving Sean standing alone in the silent darkness. As dawn's first rays of light crept over the horizon, Sean breathed a sigh of relief, knowing he had survived the Banshee's curse. But the echoes of her cry continued to reverberate in his mind, haunting him long after the night had passed. Sean emerged from the village, his shotgun still firmly in hand. The night had been a long and harrowing ordeal, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he was still being watched. He hurried back to his home, his heart pounding as he fumbled with the lock. Days turned to weeks, and Sean struggled to resume his normal life. He avoided the village square, where the Banshee had first struck, kept his doors and windows tightly shut, and jumped at every unexpected noise. But the Banshee's cry still haunted him, a constant reminder of the terror he had faced. Time passed, and Sean grew old. He married and had children, warning them of the dangers of the Banshee's curse, urging them to remain vigilant. But the Banshee's cry continued to echo through the village, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked beyond the safety of their homes. And so, as the years turned to decades, the decades turned to centuries, the legend of the Banshee's Cry lived on in Balfordin. It was a warning to all who dared to venture into the night, a chilling reminder that even the bravest of souls could be consumed by fear. The Banshee's bargain. As the young couple stepped into their new abode, an unsettling feeling engulfed them. They sensed an inexplicable presence that caused them great discomfort. Each night, strange noises reverberated through the walls, and the atmosphere was imbued with an eerie aura. Then out of nowhere, the Banshee appeared to them, offering a deal that they couldn't refuse. She promised to withdraw from their lives. As time passed, the couple tried to obliterate the memory of the horrific bargain they had struck. They welcomed a beautiful daughter into their lives, and they loved her with all their hearts. Nonetheless, they could never shake off the nagging sense that something was amiss. On the fateful night of their daughter's 5th birthday, the Banshee returned. She demanded that they fulfill their end of the agreement, and the couple was left with no alternative. They took their daughter to the Banshee's lair, tears streaming down their faces as they prepared to bid their final farewell. But just as they were about to relinquish their beloved child, a miracle unfolded before their eyes. The couple was overjoyed, but they knew that the Banshee's curse was not to be trifled with. They understood that they needed to remain vigilant, perpetually on the look for signs of her return. And so, they raised their daughter in the ways of the warrior, imparting the necessary skills to defend herself against the Banshee's curse. They recognized that they could never fully evade the consequences of the deal they had made, but they were unwavering in their determination to safeguard their family. As the years elapsed, the young girl metamorphosed into a formidable warrior in her own right. When the Banshee returned once more, she was fully prepared. She confronted the Banshee in battle, delivering blow after blow until the curse was eradicated forever. The young girl had fulfilled her parents' pledge, but she had also shattered the cycle of fear and sacrifice that had plagued their family for generations. Gazing out over the tranquil village, she knew that she had indeed become the hero that her parents had always envisioned. The inhabitants of the village cheered as the young girl emerged from the Banshee's lair. Triumphant, they had all heard of the curse that had plagued the O'Malley family for generations, and they recognized that this was a pivotal moment for their community. As time went on, the young girl developed into a legend in her own right. She instructed a fresh court of warriors, transmitting the skills that had saved her life and countless others. The village inhabitants never forgot the sacrifices that had been made to vanquish the Banshee's curse, and they endeavored to construct a better future for themselves and their offspring. They were aware that they could never let their guard down, but they were also cognizant of the fact that they possessed the strength and fortitude to overcome even the darkest of curses. Therefore, the village thrived, and the memory of the Banshee's curse receded into history. Nevertheless, in the hushed serenity of the night, some still whispered of the eerie howl that had once resounded through their streets. They realized that the Banshee's curse served as a reminder of the darkness that lurked in the shadows, patiently waiting for its opportunity to strike again. Nevertheless, they also knew that decades had passed since the young girl had broken the Banshee's curse and become a legend in her own right. The people of the village continued to tell stories of her bravery, passing them down from generation to generation. And though many years had gone by, the villagers remained vigilant, never forgetting the lessons they had learned.